After it's all said and done, the Bruins beat Ohio State, gave Mick CRONIN'S 500th career victory as a head coach on Bill Walton Day. And the UCLA women escape Iowa City with the dub.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. And hey, this is your team every day. So where we get started is the UCLA men were able to get the job done after an ugly Tuesday loss against Minnesota, which squandered the opportunity for UCLA to get a good feeling towards the end of the season. You know, they came back, and it wasn't pretty. It was not pretty. It was odd. It was weird. They were playing bad. Most of us were probably watching the UCLA women's game. After that one was going down to the wire, and this one, you're like, what's going on? They can't make any shots. It was 28-24 at the half, and it was pretty ugly basketball for the first 20 minutes. It quite frankly was. And then Eric Daley Jr. got red hot for a good portion of this game towards the middle part of the first half, all the way through the middle portion of the second half. Hit some big-time threes, went 3 of 5, 8 boards, 20 points, and he carried UCLA for their big run to take the lead, pull away, and then the rest of the Bruins started making big shots. The likes of Sky Clark hitting some dagger threes. I thought he wasn't coming back in the game after his ankle injury. Next thing you know, you see Sebastian Mack getting to the line, Adai Mata, after struggling early in this game, made his presence known by getting to the free throw line, drew at least 5, 6, 7 fouls, 10 points, 9 boards, couple of blocks, many altered shots as well. And William Kyle had a very productive 8 minutes, right? He had a couple of blocks, an assist, a rebound. Probably the most amount of action you're going to see from somebody who didn't fill up the stat sheet with points. William Kyle III had some incredibly productive minutes in 8 minutes. Incredibly. Tyler Bilodeau, UCLA's usual go-to man, was pretty quiet. He took 4 shots of UCLA's regular shot takers. That includes Kobe Johnson, Dylan Andrews, Daley Jr., Bilodeau, Clark, Stefanovic, Mack, Mata. We're not going to include William Kyle III because he normally doesn't take that many shots. So the 8 of 9 players that saw the floor in this game, UCLA, 7 of them took more shots than Tyler Bilodeau. He played 12 minutes, was in foul trouble, and quite frankly, as we've almost all been asking, a lot has been one-sided towards Mata. I've been thinking UCLA needs more combo action between Mata and William Kyle III. The post, the physical interior, even though this game was not very well played, it was pretty rough to watch. They played a lot better offensively in the second half. The Bruins did not choke this game away via the free throws, 69-61. I know John Rothstein likes to say how consistent Mick CRONIN'S been in his coaching career. Well, now he stacks up the wins to number 500. This team doesn't make it easy to watch. They can be tough at times, but then they hit big-time shots like Sky Clark. Turns an ankle, comes back in, scraps, claws, he fights, and hits a crazy, ridiculous 3 from even beyond NBA range with the shot clock expiring to put the game away with less than a minute remaining. So what did UCLA do right in this game? They didn't necessarily limit the turnovers, but they shot so much better from 3, so much better from the free throw line, had 11 more rebounds, evened up points in the paint, and in this game, they dished out 17 assists on 23 made field goals. That meant UCLA was passing the ball. 4 separate scorers with 10 or more points, and if Bilodeau made another bucket, they would have had 5 players with 10 or more points. That is UCLA's recipe for success. Now, the turnovers, that's not going to be to Mick CRONIN'S liking. The rebounding, the intensity, the effort, despite UCLA turning it over more than Ohio State, both teams ended with the same points off turnovers. That's a big plus for UCLA. The Bruins went big. Then they made their presence felt. They had more rebounds. And I heard during the broadcast, Ohio State was dealing with the flu. Well, the Bruins definitely dealt with that a week and a half ago for multiple games. Now these guys are feeling it. And with this victory, UCLA puts them still in contention for a top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament, which is a double bye in a couple weeks' time. Wisconsin still has to go to Michigan State, who is now, currently at the moment, the Big Ten leaders. So if Wisconsin goes to East Lansing and loses, Purdue, who's now lost like 4 in a row after blowing a huge halftime lead in Bloomington to Indiana to lose big to the Hoosiers, UCLA, if they win out, which includes a game coming up against Purdue on Friday night. Yes, it still means a scrappy game against Northwestern and a home rivalry matchup against USC to end the regular season. I think that's doable with the way Purdue's been playing. It's certainly doable against Northwestern. A couple of quad 1 opportunities for the Bruins on the road, and then what should be a quad 2 chance against USC at home. It's doable for the Bruins considering Purdue's just utter collapse at this end of the season. We've seen these teams, Big Ten teams, UCLA, Oregon, Purdue. Teams are losing 4 in a row. This is some bug they're catching because they're having to go to the West Coast or they're going to have to go to the East Coast and just deal with the travel, all right? Now, Purdue doesn't have to come to UCLA, but, going to the Oregons, the Washington, that takes its toll. And then when you go play Michigan, Illinois, Oregon, all those games in a row, Wisconsin saw the same thing. You play those games in a row, next thing you know, everybody's having the same similar tough schedule. So as much as it was horrible for UCLA to lose to Minnesota at home, the worst loss of the year, today they rebounded, they came out. They didn't make that statement like I wanted them to make, but Mick Cronin's team came out and hustled. Like Kobe Johnson shot terribly in this game. But the senior leader on this team, the one-year player for the Bruins coming over from USC, 3 steals, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block shot. Probably could have had a couple more too, with him making almost every play despite not making a bucket. That's the effort and intensity. The statement played by this UCLA Bruins team was that we're not going to give up. We're going to scrap and claw. And as ugly as they played, because they're never going to be a well-oiled machine offensively under Mick Cronin. That's just not his bread and butter. Bread and butter, it's defensive intensity, highlighted by the Kobe Johnson stat line I just gave you. 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 to 4 combined blocks, and steals in this game. That is what UCLA is going to have to do to win while making threes, 8 of 20, Eric Daley Jr., big games, and then production from the post. If UCLA does that, make some threes, get quality production from Daley Jr., you use simply William Kyle III in a Diamata, there is room for success. I know I went on a rant Tuesday and I said, don't let me believe so hard. My tendency is to be optimistic. I know you guys don't believe me in terms of my talking, but I'm truly optimistic off the air too. But that is the key for success. Is it always doable? Is William Kyle and or Mata always the best combination to play in games? Is Tyler Bilodeau not scoring being a big factor in games doable? For UCLA, weirdly enough, your leading scorer doesn't do anything. Yeah, they can win games at home by almost double digits. In terribly ugly played games, it's the style of defense, the intensity that Cronin wants to play. Ohio State, that's a little shorthanded, but a game UCLA had to win, especially on a Bill Walton day where they celebrated the late great Bill Walton. Tie-dye shirts for almost everybody, it seemed like, in the lower bowl of Pauley Pavilion, including the broadcast, in-studio, press row, everything to honor Bill Walton. It's the heart, the hustle, the tenacity, and that's what the Bruins brought today. Now, are they always going to score 80 points? No. But considering they looked woeful in the first half, Daley Jr. started stroking it from downtown. Sky Clark picked it up. The heart and the hustle makes you want to cheer for them. Now, it blows your mind how they lost the North Carolina game, how they lost the Minnesota game. But the heart, the hustle, the willingness to root for this team is absolutely there. As crushing as that game was Tuesday night, the willingness, this is one of those teams you want to root for. There are teams you come in and you're like, no, this team you want to root for. I'm tired of seeing this nonsense about the one-year mercenaries. That's just this day and age of college basketball. If you're like UCLA is better than that, go look at almost every single college basketball team. And I know Cronin was very slow to getting to the portal. Even though Johnny Juzang was a transfer, a complete overhaul of the roster was expected after last year's team. Now, why does Mick Cronin not have any class of 25 commits? mostly because maybe he's trying to work on the class of 26. Maybe he can seal something late like he did getting Trent Perry for this year's class. Although Perry didn't even play in this game, he was still a great signing for last year's class. Cronin might have something in the works. UCLA has 2 red shirts this year who are eligible to play next year if they return, just like nearly every single player in this roster, except for a couple, Johnson and Stefanovic, are able to play next year. And I could think a world where a good portion of them could return. Now, NIL, Pro Bowl, NBA scouting, the relationship with the head coach all make a difference. But this is a team you want to root for, hopefully this year and next, with maybe a large portion of the supporting cast returning in 25-26, now that they would know how to navigate the Big Ten. The rest of this Big Ten schedule, the NCAA tournament, a little bit better seeding, a small chance at getting the West Regional lies in the next 2 weeks, where if they can sweep out the rest of the regular season and end it with 4 straight wins, you can maybe forget the Minnesota loss. A win or 2 in the Big Ten tournament, dare I say, get to the final / win it. And then UCLA is looking at a 6 seed, small percent chance at a 5 seed in the West Regional. That would be the best case scenario for UCLA at this moment. Analytics give UCLA a lot of love. The net has the Bruins in the top 30, just like Ohio State's a near top 30 team in the net, but that's not all that it shows. The pollsters have never given UCLA love. The selection committee, we'll see what they do, how they match up the super conferences with the NCAA selection committee. But overall, Mick Cronin gets the job done in the most Mick Cronin way. Heart, hustle, toughness, and defense, responding to a tough result on Tuesday night to get a UCLA win on Bill Walton Day. Maybe that's how it was supposed to be written. Was it scripted this way? I don't know. I don't have that foresight. In the end, UCLA beats Ohio State 69-61, and it feels a little bit better going on the road with the victory. Some time off to rest, recover, and prepare for a slumping Purdue Boilermaker team that shows, hey, maybe the Bruins can get something done. All right? We'll see how that goes. Next, we're talking UCLA women's basketball because, hey, they were fighting their way against Iowa. That was by no means an easy game. And, dude, those officials straight up sucked. Talk about that next. Attention, Locked On UCLA fans. The future of college sports is here, and it's transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table, right? Fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. And now with Roy, you can be a part of that change and support the Bruin athletes, the UCLA athletes in the most transparent places and ways possible. With the NIL app with Roy, specifically, you can choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes you back. And if the player transfers, you get your money back. All right, we talked about the portal. You get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app is giving fans control, no more uncertainty, so you can help shape the team and the future of college sports. Download the Roy app from the App Store and start backing the UCLA athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. All right, moving on. We're talking about the UCLA women's basketball team, number 3 in the country, on a significant day in the women's college basketball world because number one Notre Dame went to NC State and lost in a thrilling double overtime game. What does that mean? UCLA has a shot to be number 1, and with their win, they're definitely staying in the top 2. I think UCLA is a much better case than Texas to being a number 1 team in the country. I can understand Notre Dame being ranked a little bit higher than UCLA. I can't understand Texas necessarily. In the end, UCLA, the last time the selection committee revealed the top part of the seeding, UCLA is the number 1 overall seed. In my mind, UCLA, the women, are the number 1 team in the country. They went to Iowa, a place where not even USC could win, although Caitlin Clark's presence could have been a part of that crazy win for Iowa over USC. Similar type energetic crowd. UCLA, after a lot of struggles lately, Illinois, Michigan State. Lauren Betts was a key part of this game until she was in foul trouble early, sat the last chunk of the first half, and UCLA goes in the locker room trailing, looking like, hey, this might be that USC game all over again, although just no Supernova and Juju Watkins. Yet Iowa in the third quarter goes up 12 with just a little over 6 minutes remaining. All right, 6 minutes remaining. And yet by the end of that, with UCLA trailing by 12 with just under 6 minutes remaining in the third quarter, at the end of the third quarter, that game was tied, blink of an eye, because Iowa didn't have a single player, even though Hannah Stuelke was there, even though Lauren Betts, his high school teammate, Addison O'Grady, was playing a big chunk of minutes in the high post, making passes. Lauren Betts had a key stat line. 22 points, had 12 rebounds, drew 7 fouls, a couple of assists, 3 block shots, and as always, led UCLA in plus 11 on the floor in her 34 minutes played, 9 of 12 from the floor. Made most of her free throws. So UCLA leaned on her. And there's some plays where that weren't in the stat sheet. She had 2 assists to 4 turnovers. The team was putting her in terrible spots to get the ball. The zone that Iowa played, credit to them, the Hawkeyes found ways to keep the Bruins at bay by forcing Betts into tough spots of getting the ball deep in the post on the inline. She made some fantastic passes, one to a cutting Dugalich with the game on the line to put them up 4. I don't even know if she made the pass, let alone got the open player making the shot. Late in the game, Kiki Rice fouls out. That led to Alina Arnasalo with a tied game late, hitting clutch free throws. And UCLA won the game because Alina Arnasalo was able to hit 2 game-winning free throws. With your All-American, your point guard, your starting point guard on the bench fouled out after the Bruins fouled a 3-point shooter, the worst thing you could do. It was Arnasalo makes 2 clutch free throws. Betts gets the key defense on the game-tying, game-winning shot potentially for Iowa, and the Bruins escaped Iowa City with a 67-65 win. If that doesn't just tell you about their determination, even when Kiki Rice was playing awful when it comes to shooting the basketball, she had 12 points, had only 2 assists. Nobody shot the ball well for the Bruins. Yeah, they shot 42% from the field, but if you take away Lauren Betts' stats, every single player shot way worse than expected. It was great to see Janiah Barker out there after leaving the last game with injury. Okay, but she wasn't herself. Tamia Gardner, 2 games since her breakout performance against Michigan State in the game-winning 3. 1 shot, missed it, wasn't a big impact other than a few rebounds in 9 minutes of action. London Jones wasn't feeling it. It was Kiki Rice keying the comeback, missing a lot of open threes, but clutch ones late. And that's what the Bruins have had to learn to do. After a good chunk of this season has largely been UCLA blowout victories, South Carolina included, they had to learn how to win some close games. So they fought against USC on the road, down 14. They learned what it was like to lose and have to get better. Then Michigan State, with Lauren Betts out, gave UCLA a run for their money. Illinois fought through a third quarter and forced the Bruins through a fabulous fourth quarter to pull it out. Same thing in Iowa, because Iowa at home is a tough place to play. They almost went to a top 10 Ohio State team and took them out in overtime, I believe, on the road in Columbus. And UCLA still pulled it out. Fantastic game. The whole thing with this game was that it was tied going in the fourth, and the 2 minutes to open the fourth quarter, in less than 2 minutes, kid you not, the officials lost complete control of this game. They did. They're horrible. It was an abomination, I think, in that fourth quarter, when Iowa, in the first 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, had themselves in the bonus. The bonus in 2 minutes. And remember, women's college basketball, they reset the shots and the fouls, right? They reset the fouls to go for free throws in the bonus. UCLA had committed 5 fouls in less than 2 minutes. So what happened? The officials had to turn around and give UCLA 2 or 3 foul calls in the right end. And the game came down to, a foul on a 3-point shooter that led to tying free throws. Poor Lucy Olson fell down, tripped a Arnasalo, and that's how the game was decided. But the freshman came through, made some clutch buckets in the face of a tough Hawkeye crowd. Not every freshman can do that. Or if she misses one, then I think Iowa's doing something different as opposed to going for a 3 in the win with O'Grady over Lauren Betts. Not the best decision, I think. But, man, there was the offensive foul that knocked out Kiki Rice. There was the backcourt violation in Iowa that was questionable. Both ways, the officiating in this game just went south, really far south in this game in the fourth quarter. That kind of disrupted and just ruined what was a very good game for both teams. I know the Bruins got to the bonus early in the third. We're making free throws. Betts was getting fouled. But the fourth quarter, they lost complete and utter control in my mind, where they weren't helped out by a close 50-50 ball knocked off of Bruins' hands, where 2 possessions or extra possessions and 1 for Iowa led to at least 3 foul calls against UCLA. But they got themselves put in a bind where less than 2 minutes, you cannot. I know if it's clear and obvious, not all those fouls were clear and obvious. Some of them were ticky-tack, and that led to 8 fouls being called in almost 3 minutes. That was rough. And I'm pretty sure the officials would love to have that back. Both coaches would love to have a little more free-flowing of a fourth quarter that wasn't filled with foul shots. Iowa in the fourth quarter took 11 free throws. UCLA took 6. So we had 17 combined free throws between the two teams in the fourth quarter. For the game, they shot 39. So for the game, they nearly shot the game's allotted half free throws, right? Half the amount of free throws in one quarter because of how many fouls were stacked up in 10 minutes. In 10 minutes of action, not 20 minutes, 10 minutes. How do you let that happen? That was awful. Now, UCLA escaped a tough environment with a win. Should build the confidence of the true freshman Arna Salo making big plays. Duga Leach hit some clutch buckets, got herself 9 points, 6 assists, had 7 rebounds, stat stuffed in the best way possible. And the Bruins, despite a slumping Gardner, a banged-up Barker, saw some clutch minutes from Kendall Dudley, another true freshman, although she did foul the three-point shooter without touching her, got in the landing space. We've seen some positives from true freshmen in the last few games, and players stepping up. Obviously, Lauren Betts is just outstanding. We saw what it was like when UCLA has her sit for a few minutes in foul trouble. UCLA leaned on their starters in this game. They weren't shooting well. Iowa collapsed and packed in with a tight zone. UCLA did not shoot well, 5 of 25. That's what teams are going to do in the postseason. So a recipe for beating the Bruins has been found out last month or so. USC still needed a superhuman individual effort at home in a sold-out crowd to do so, which should hopefully give us a sigh of relief. Like, okay, it took a superhuman effort by one of the best players in all of college basketball in her home gym to beat UCLA in a back-and-forth affair. Now, UCLA has been very close to losing, but good teams pull it out, and they've been able to do so with and without their best players in the game for one reason or the other. Foul trouble, injuries, missing the game, and players have had to step up one way or the other, which is only going to help this team in March. Only going to help them in March. But alas, the number 3 Bruins find themselves moving up to the 2 spot, I think, or the 1 spot. We'll see what the pollsters do. They seem to have a bias slanted against UCLA. Okay, we'll figure that out. The Bruins, the top team in the land in my heart, and they escaped that place with a win. To wrap this show up, we're going to talk a Bill Walton tribute. We didn't really do one on the show. I was out of town and unfortunately didn't really do one. But now we're going to talk some of the best little tidbits, not a full 30 minutes worth, but some of the best tidbits on Bill Walton Day at the UCLA men's game where they're all wearing tie-dye shirts. The only one I have is red, and I don't wear red on this podcast, so I'm going to wear UCLA blue. We'll talk about Bill Walton and what made him so special in just a brief few moments here to wrap up the pod. Next, a Locked On UCLA. All right, let's talk some Bill Walton. It was Bill Walton Day at Pauley Pavilion for the UCLA men's basketball team. He didn't truly have a celebration of life. He did not want one, according to Mick Cronin. So all they had was a tribute in this game against Ohio State, which was this whole entire season as the late, great Bill Walton passed in May of 2024. Here we are in February 2025, and we still miss the big fella. You can look at what were some of his best moments at UCLA? Of course, being a part of the great winning streak, leading to 2 UCLA national championships. His performance against Memphis State in the national championship goes down as one of the greatest individual efforts ever in any championship scenario, right? There's professional levels of greatness, right? You can talk all this stuff, but at intercollegiate level and maybe professional level, anytime there's been a championship game effort, Bill Walton's near perfect effort, 21 of 22 for 44 points against Memphis State. And I think Bill Walton got the rebound on the miss and put it back. Like, there's no such thing as utter domination like that. 44 points, the most points ever scored in an NCAA men's national championship game. That is like one of the greatest efforts ever. With an undefeated season on the line, he put himself as one of the best players and stepped up, right? How many times do we see great players not always just step up, but they do good? He stepped up and was fantastic and gave the Bruins an international championship. He was good in his days at Helix High, winning championships, going undefeated when he was a big part of their championship runs in high school. Why am I comparing his high school varsity seasons to his UCLA career? Well, you've maybe heard this number, but we're going to throw this back at you. Bill Walton, in official games from the end of his high school career, junior to senior, UCLA freshman year, because the Bruins had a freshman team, collegiate athletics did not allow freshmen to play at the time. So UCLA had Bill Walton, quote unquote, sit as a freshman. Imagine that this day and age. Bill Walton and his freshman team went undefeated, I believe 20-0. 2 undefeated years at UCLA. So 73 straight wins to start his UCLA career as an official Bruin. You mix in the 20 games that he had as a freshman team member, 49 consecutive victories to end his high school career. All in all these wins totaled to a personal winning streak of 142 wins in a row. Now, the UCLA winning streak, which was snapped during Walton's 3rd and final season at UCLA as a varsity member, 142 wins in a row. The man didn't know how to lose. He won and dominated high school, won a couple national championships, and was the most outstanding player in the most dominating individual effort ever. Went to the NBA, won a couple of championships, was an NBA Sixth Man of the Year, 2 championships for 2 different franchises, literally reached the pinnacle as a player, and was as entertaining as a broadcaster as you get. So maybe the greatest individual effort in a championship game ever. And by the way, he probably could have scored 50, but he left the championship game against Memphis State. If you ever read about that game, he left it with 2 minutes and 50 seconds left because he was dealing with injuries, because he got hurt, hit to the floor. So he left that game early with 2 minutes and 50 seconds left, and he could have had 50. He was so dominant, but he left early when UCLA was still up plenty, and the championship was well on its way, still going to Westwood for another consecutive season at that point. So he could have had 50 if he didn't leave that game early. You add on all those wins, the definition of a winner at basketball, a winner at broadcast, because all he would do is talk about the Pac-10, then the Pac-12 as the Conference of Champions, all right? The Conference of Champions. It just how he loved the West Coast basketball, right? We see everybody else kind of forget about it. He loved the West Coast. In this day and age where all the West Coast teams have made their way into super leagues to play with the Midwest, the East, the mountain time zones, loved West Coast basketball and give love to the other schools as well, but he would truly love UCLA the most. Is zaniness as a personality, as a broadcaster. I was reading the Ben Bolch article in the LA Times, his little mini recap. He wrote, they've already written one, an obituary in the LA Times, they've in memoriam, but just the latest read up in the LA Times from Ben Bolch, another great talk about how Bill Walton would go out there and in the middle of a broadcast would start singing happy birthday to a UCLA SID or a communications director, or be pointing out fellow Helix High grads. He's like, all right, we're everywhere, all right, to his fellow Helix alumni from his fellow high school brethren. Just how he could eat a candle that was lit on the broadcast with his tie-dye shirts, everything. that just made him larger than life as a UCLA Bruin, as a person, a broadcaster. Josh Lewin, the UCLA broadcaster in this article, is quoted as, he always put others before himself, right? Whether it's getting on the plane and telling Josh Lewin to go with him, having Josh Lewin get the rental car before him, always would point out others and put their stories above his own, despite him having one of the most unique stories, unique lives in terms of just basketball players, people in general. He lived a great life, and he was a great Bruin and a great model for what a UCLA Bruin is to be, represent the program before, during, and after his UCLA career. And we celebrate his life as best we could, but man, we miss. I don't have a candle lit to eat. I can't. I'm pretty goofy in my own right, but I can't match the greatness and the zaniness, and always the well-versed, usually well-rehearsed Bill Walton with always a great winning line at the right moment. So with this, we miss you, Bill. Great the Bruins got that big win today on the Bill Walton Day when they had this tribute game for him. His wife was an honorary captain for the game. You saw Kareem. You saw former UCLA greats in attendance. That's how much he meant. You don't always get those greats at the same game at the same time when there's not a top 10 team in the building. And they came out for Bill. They did. And the Bruins showed their heart, their hustle, their tenacity, and came away with the dub. All in all, the UCLA men won. The UCLA women won. It was just meant to be a UCLA W today. Just throwing one up to you in the sky there, big fella. This has been Locked On UCLA. Let's give a clap to have Bill hear it all throughout the universe. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins. Miss you, Bill. We love you forever, Bill Walton.